Well, Paul Heinbecker served as Canada's ambassador to the UN under Prime Minister Jean Chrétien. He was also chief foreign policy advisor to Prime Minister Brian Mulroney. Paul Heinbecker joins us now from Ottawa. Mr. Heinbecker, thank you for joining us. I want to begin with this abstention from the United States. That seems to go against traditional U.S. policy. Why the change there?
I think the Americans, frankly, just got fed up with the policies of the Netanyahu government. It's been Canadian policy all along that the settlements were actually occupation, that they were illegal, that they were impediments to the reaching of a two-state solution. And that, by the way, is the position taken by most Western governments. So what we're seeing in this case is that the Americans, instead of protecting the Israelis by vetoing the resolution, have let the resolution go through, and it's quite a strong resolution, and it basically calls on the Israelis to stop building settlements in territory that doesn't belong to them.
We're already hearing reaction from Israel. One minister saying that essentially the United States has abandoned its only ally in the Mideast. What is the practical impact of this vote on Israel?
Well, I think if it increases the isolation Israel is feeling. In fact, the isolation Israel finds itself in. It means that the relations with the outgoing Democratic president, are basically unretrievable, and they will now focus, I presume, on trying to rebuild a relationship with incoming President Trump. But what it means more particularly is, in diplomatic terms, it means that the Israeli settlement policy has been condemned internationally, the Israelis have been told to stop, and there's nothing that a new Trump administration will be able to do about that, because it's going to take the votes of the Security Council to change that outcome, and it's very unlikely, in the extreme, that the Security Council would go along with such a request from the Israelis and or President Trump.
Now, you mentioned Trump, and we should point out that this vote that happened today was supposed to take place yesterday, but it was postponed partly because Donald Trump waded into the conversation to say that the U.S. should veto the measure. How unusual is that for the United States, the incoming U.S. president-elect, to actually get involved before being sworn into office?
Well, there's a lot to be said for the new president-elect to actually learn something about international relations before he pronounces himself. The position he's been taking on nuclear weapons and an arms race are, quite frankly, very risky and very dangerous and very ill-advised. Now he's intervening in a very difficult political situation, international diplomatic situation involving the Israelis, the Palestinians, and settlements and two-state solution. There is an old principle in American presidential politics, and that is that there's only one president at a time, and the new president doesn't pronounce himself on any of these major international questions until he actually assumes office and has had the briefings and the intelligence information provided to him so that he's in a better position to understand what he's actually doing. So I think the real break with tradition here is President Trump pronouncing himself on all sorts of foreign policy issues before he's even come into office.
We're quickly losing time here, but I do want to ask you, does this resolution have any power to sway the leaders in Israel to stop building more settlements in occupied territories?
Well, it goes on the other side of the scale. It goes on and it will countries like the European countries in particular, and other countries more generally around the world, will be reconfirmed in their belief that that the Israeli policy must stop, and the Israelis will have a difficult time persuading others that they should be able to go on building settlements, expanding settlements, and importing settlers, which are clearly against international law, and particularly the Fourth Geneva Convention. You cannot transfer your citizens into a territory you occupy, and this land has been occupied since 1967.
Mr. Heinbecker, thank you very much for this.